recording and are we live?
We are doing both right now.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
We're
Awesome.
on. We're on.
Welcome, everyone. We're here with our good friend EK Powell of What's Good English. And we are going to be doing our second episode of the Left Wing Live. Although we got to figure out the naming here between what we do on Wednesdays and this. But
Yeah, that's true.
we'll figure it out. If you happen to be listening right now, drop in the comments what we should call the new live version of the show. But we're going to be starting out here, and I'll start us off with Kamala Harris calling for a ceasefire. So
ceasefire,
yes. All right, guys. So one of the big pieces of I'll call it news this week, and I say I'll call it news because I'm really undecided on whether it matters or not. And I want to hear your guys' opinion because Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States, she does do things in her day job. And one of the things she did was call for a ceasefire this week, which shows a very large step for the Biden administration in general. So far, they have been basically allergic to the word ceasefire, have twisted themselves into pretzels to avoid using it, have vetoed 3 UN ceasefire resolutions, and now the vice president is calling for a ceasefire, which I'll say my thoughts after hearing your guys, because I view it in a couple different ways, and I want to hear what you guys think. EK, you're smiling, so I'm picking on you first.
Yeah. So I actually watched a portion of that speech yesterday because I was using part of it in a video that I was making. So it's like that part comes at the tail end of the speech. And she builds up to it by giving like the longest possible disclaimer ever. It's like Hamas is a terrorist organization. They've done all these terrible, horrible things. They call for this, that, just like the longest possible disclaimer ever. And then she goes into that being said, there's been, horrible situation in Gaza. Children are starving. Women are having to give birth in horrible conditions. And then she says, we need an immediate ceasefire. And then there's a pause and you can tell she's thinking, clip it now. And then she goes 4-6 weeks. And I'm like, oh, that's basically just cutting all the wind out of the sails there. But I'm like, okay, you don't get this, because if you remember from back in January, when Kamala Harris was on The View, and they asked her, hey, what do you think of Gen Z, all the young people, all the stuff over social media calling for a ceasefire, everything that's happening in Palestine, all these horrible things that are happening, all of those horrible things were still happening back in January and in February. They're still happening right now. The only material difference that, changed between Kamala Harris from January and Kamala Harris from 4 or 5 days ago now is the fact that, 100,000 people voted for uncommitted instead of Joe Biden in a swing state. That's it. And that's just a straight reactionary of, okay, this might actually be hurting us a lot more than we think it's hurting us. We need to start using just a little bit of, the dialogue, and the stuff that all of the people that we need to vote for us are saying if we want to possibly get elected come November.
Yeah, it is. I was really annoyed. Annoyed is too soft of a word, because I just ran across this clip just scrolling. I didn't know she made a speech. I didn't know anything about it in any context whatsoever. And so the clip got me. And she said, given the suffering that's been happening in Gaza, I am calling for an immediate ceasefire. And my eyes lit up. I said, oh my God, I can't believe it. There's finally good news. I was just filled with this joy that there was finally some movement on this. And it's my own fault. I was dumb enough to fall for it. And then sure enough, when EK said, you had the pause, just this 2-second pregnant pause that was obviously purposeful. And then she says, for at least 6 weeks. And I was just deflated. Then I was really mad. I was less mad at them than I was at myself for, falling into this obvious trap. And it's EK, I think you mentioned it, how the language has evolved over the months, because there were times whenever the Biden administration would call for a pause. A pause they were cool with, but the term ceasefire they seemed allergic to. That seemed to, awaken their inner coward. And I did, I did a small video about this, but I did think about this for a while that someone had commented on a video I made about this, and they said, "Oh, I actually haven't heard a lot from Kamala Harris lately." And I was thinking about the fact that part of your job as vice president of the United States is like the one of the biggest. It's tied next to breaking ties in the Senate is your most important thing to do, is to do the shit work for the president. And it has been funny over the years watching Biden give Harris just like the shittiest thing possible, or the most controversial things possible to talk about. The first thing he did was the border. You remember that speech he made about like the chaos on the border? She's like, just don't come. just don't come. He has like nothing to say. And this has been going on for years. So I do feel a little bit of sympathy, but Biden sure does. Like, man, I did this for 8 years. You can do it for 4. Yeah, at least. So I don't feel too bad about it. And another thing I wanted to point out from Harris's speech was how this is something that's annoyed me, because the administration, it's, how newspapers and reports talk about police shootings and speak about them as if they're acts of God. 5 teenagers, die in officer-related shooting. And they're as passive voice as possible. She really, really laid into that with this whole thing. The suffering in Gaza, the people who are hungry in Gaza, the children who are displaced in Gaza. Just no active voice whatsoever on what's causing this. Like no criticism of Israel whatsoever. And yeah, it's my own fault for thinking that there was actually some major movement on this, but that's just I feel dumber because of it.
So I agree with parts of that. I disagree with one key element.
Mm-hmm.
The parts I agree with are, my first reaction to this is, oh, go fuck yourself, Kamala. Like, what are we talking about here? We could have done this at any moment, like you said, EK. Like, nothing has changed. There's no change in conditions that would call for a ceasefire now and not 3 months ago. It's the exact same thing. It's just gotten worse, and the voices haven't dissipated. I think that there's no coincidence that this came out the day before Super Tuesday, on the immediately following the undecided vote, which we're going to talk about in a later episode this week. But so it's so obviously politically motivated to do this. It's Kamala doing it, not Biden. We're not there yet. But I will say, if you're looking at it from our lens of reality, this is like insultingly stupid. But if you're looking at it through the lens of Netanyahu, like you're sitting in Netanyahu's shoes right now, this is an escalation. Like, this is a major escalation in diplomatic relations with Israel, for the vice president to be demanding a ceasefire. No matter how much she manipulates that to say something else, she's intentionally saying that word. And from what you mentioned earlier, TJ, all of the cowardice surrounding this word, the inability for anyone in the Biden administration to say ceasefire, I think it's safe to assume that Netanyahu has been pretty fucking clear to them that he doesn't want them to say the word ceasefire. And they said it. And so, like, is it Biden saying it? No, because if it's Biden saying it, as we've discussed on this show, it's over. But this is like one step away from Biden saying it, and I would be shitting my pants if I was Netanyahu about that.
Yeah, agree. Like, and there's no way she makes that speech without having approval.
Zero.
Well, that's actually when she paused. That was my first thought. I was like, wait, fuck, did she not mean to say ceasefire? Did she just start an international incident? And then she's like, and I was like, fuck.
We've got a broken arrow. The vice president is a broken arrow.
She's going rogue.
I'm sorry. Keep going, EK.
No, there's no way she says that without it being approved from the highest of high levels, and probably still up to the minute before she even got to that mic. Maybe somebody in the earpiece was even like, okay, we're going to go ahead with the ceasefire thing. But like, still, they're still pulling the punches with it. They're putting a time limit on it, They're like, and we know we've got the whole Ramadan thing. We've had Biden with the ice cream cone talking about, well, they need to have a ceasefire, and Ramadan is coming up and all this other stuff. So it's like the wind was basically taken out of the sails of whatever she was gonna say before she even said it. Like, and then they had to make sure they attached that extra 6-week thing right after she said it to make sure it's there. Like, it's it's a move in the right direction. Hopefully we get there a lot sooner than November 4th, because I just don't think it's going to work out well if if everything is just allowed to continue unchecked.
Yeah, so I don't know if I hold the same opinion that John brought up, because here's why. The she mentioned that you guys talk about how she prefaced everything she said by talking about making it clear that she condemned Hamas, the meme basically.
Yeah,
And
it's like a 7-minute speech, and 5 minutes of it is disclaimer.
yeah. Before I call for the ceasefire, I want to make it very clear that these folks had it coming. Let's be very honest about it. I got to make sure that's out there. But so she mentioned at the end where she says that I'm calling for an immediate ceasefire for at least 6 weeks. That is the deal that is on the table. And it's not the first time they've made an offer like this, because it's a pause. And they've done pauses before. They've just refused to call them ceasefires. So there, like you guys said, there's really no difference here. And it's a difference in language. That's true. That would be a little unsettling if I were Netanyahu, and I'd be thinking, okay, I don't like the fact that they're saying ceasefire, but you got to keep into account it's election season and how much do they really mean it. So yeah, like it wouldn't be great news if I was him, but I wouldn't be super terrified, because if they were really serious about it, they could actually do something instead of, just changing the language. And also, she put the onus on the Palestinians and saying that, this is the deal on the table, this 6-week ceasefire, take it or leave it. And of course, they're not going to accept it, because it's not like it's. And they offered their own deal too. It's funny when people always mention this. Say, well, Gaza, they rejected this deal. It's like, look, that's not how deals work. Like, what they rejected was a proposition. They rejected like a one-sided strategy. They've offered deals too. And in fact, they offered for a full ceasefire, which is what they want. And the full ceasefire they will surrender all the prisoners they have, all the Israeli prisoners, in exchange for all the prisoners the Israelis have. And the Israelis have like 3 times more, by the way, prisoners than the Palestinians have. So yeah, I think that it's just a misdirection to say, well, we're offering the ceasefire and they're not taking it. Well, what do you want us to do?
Even that language, prisoner versus hostage, is so fucking loaded.
It's so true. I did it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point, man. That's a great point. I didn't even catch that.
I wasn't even accusing you, but it's natural. Like,
yeah,
the propaganda seeps into us even, and it's like, yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense. And this entire thing, like, don't get me wrong, fuck the entire administration. This entire maneuver, this like, oh, there's this negotiation going on, is like such quintessential distilled liberal moderate bullshit. It's like it's the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi. You walk on left side of the road, you're fine. You walk on right side of the road, you're fine. You walk in the middle, squish like grape. And like that's what they're doing. Because what does a ceasefire do? How does that do anything? Because if you have a ceasefire that's temporary, it's 6 weeks long. Okay, so we're just gonna keep killing people again after that? Why? Like if we can stop killing people for 6 weeks, why should we keep killing people after that? It makes no sense. Like there's no way. It doesn't require any negotiation with Gazans, with Hamas, with whoever, to just stop killing people. That can be done unilaterally. You are the far stronger nuclear superpower fighting a small city which you have held captive for almost 2 decades. Like this, it's so clear. Whatever. We've been through this, guys.
I know, right? I know. It's Groundhog Day with the shit. It's terrible.
But I will say, I want to very much emphasize that as much as it feels like nothing is happening, there has been significant movement. And that isn't to say anything good about the Biden administration, but it is to say that for decades, there's been zero movement on Israel's position in Palestine. I'm sorry, on Israel's position in Palestine, on America's position in Israel. And we're starting to see rapid movement relative to that. And so, like, if you put it in that perspective, I'd like to just push back against doomerism, because the things that people are doing out there, that the people in our audience who have been watching this content, who've been commenting, who've been sharing it with their friends and their family, and that's not just our content, that's everyone's content about this topic, like, you are making a difference. Like, continuing to talking about this, going to the primaries and vote undecided or uncommitted, it is pushing the powers that be. It is making people uncomfortable and forcing them to change their actions ever so slightly. So let's keep it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to like piggyback on that a little bit, like I had somebody comment on one of my recent videos, something like, "Oh, this has been going on, for 70 something plus years," but it's like, yes, but like no one, it has never had the eye of the world like it currently has right now. Like it's not in any history books that any of us were like that I personally was taught, like through like grade school, middle school, high school, college, like nothing. Like it's never been in everybody's face. It's never been a topic that you can just talk to like almost any rando off the street and they'll have some sort of opinion about it. Like it's not occupied this amount of space in like the global eye like ever before. So like there is no better time than now to actually push some form of resolution for these people.
Yeah, that's true. I like both of those sentiments from you guys that, yeah, it's bad, but we got to push forward as much as we can, do the small part that we can. We're not the president, we can't unilaterally change anything, but we try to affect the small circles we can. And I do like John's point of pushing against doomerism. It's real easy to do that. It's real lazy and it's kind of fun, rooting for the end of the world. It's pretty easy to do.
You like rooting for the side that's probably going to win.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And let's be real, we've all been there several times that, look, the human experiment has failed. Like the quicker this asteroid comes, the better. We had our shot, we blew it, give someone else a chance. But, it is good to remember that. And which is why I try to focus on the comedy part of it, is that just think about what Vice President Harris said the other day. She said that what's going on in Gaza is devastating. It is an inexcusable tragedy, and it needs to stop right now for about a month and a half. And then we can go back to doing the exact same thing. And then we're cool with it. It's like, come on, that doesn't make any sense at all. But I don't know. It's dark, but you got to make the best as you can. Excellent. That was 17 minutes. That was great.
I thought you were going to come in with a punchline of like, what's happening in Gaza is a tragedy. There are still hundreds of thousands of children who are alive.
Yeah, we're not quite that evil. We're not quite that evil. But so we had around 4 viewers that segment, and we have 3 right now. So thank you guys for watching. We appreciate all of you. It's weird, the numbers, you never know which ones are which, how much they're rotating, but yeah, we enjoy it either way.
You never know. We appreciate you. If you guys have any comments, feel free to chime in. We probably won't address them too much in the middle of the segments, but when we're in the middle, but in this time, yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah. It's I do like this idea of the vice president going rogue. This is the more I thought about the entire segment, and it got more and more fun the more I thought about this, where so when the United States was first founded, for those of you who don't know, the electoral college system was not, we had electoral college, but the way we elected the president and vice president was they didn't run on the same ticket. Everyone ran individually, and the person who got the most votes was the president. Person got the second most votes was vice president. And insane. They assumed rather foolishly that everyone would have pretty much the same political views, and it would just be a battle over which person was best to lead this nation, like real naive shit. But they changed that real quick. That only lasted like 3 administrations or something like that. That's one of the reasons that Alexander Hamilton was shot by Aaron Burr. It was over, presidential elections and everything. But I was thinking about the vice president going rogue, and they actually could. Like if Harris just went out there and just used her position to just broadcast completely opposite shit than Biden. Now, he's her boss, but constitutionally, Biden cannot fire her. Like he's the one person that the president cannot fire. She could go rogue anytime she wants.
That would be such a good play, TJ.
I was thinking this would be an amazing thing to watch on TV, a drama or something like that. The vice president's like, fuck it, I'm going to use everything I have to just stay. This is the actual state of the administration, and then the president have to go on TV to correct it, and they're just battling. Once again, you see why this system did not last very long. Like we'd have President Biden and even Vice President Trump. Could you imagine?
That would be no, TJ. I'm sorry. We need to go back. President Biden, Vice President Trump. Trump would be the greatest reality show in the history of television.
Right. It would be entertaining as hell. Not great for
It's
like
kinda what we have
global.
now, if you think
Say
about
what? Say what?
That's kind of what that's kind of what we have right now, if you think about
It's close. It's actually very close. You're right. It's actually very close. But Trump doesn't. So the vice president would have access to all the top secret information, though. Like Trump just stole his from his last administration, but they could, man, yeah, it would be entertaining. Real life, it would be pretty dangerous, but it would be pretty fun to watch. I would imagine that.
Something like that actually did kind of happen during Obama's presidency with Biden, because like Biden pretty much like dictated like the whole like Israel-Palestine policy and everything.
Oh yeah. Oh my
Obama
God.
was against like the illegal settlements in the West Bank, and then Netanyahu had like done something, and Obama was like super pissed off about it, and he sent Hillary Clinton over there to like deal with the situation, and Biden basically like swooped in and ruined everything that Hillary was gonna do before July. Barack Obama, warmongering Obama, and Hillary Clinton are the good guys in this story that were going over there to like actually help out the Palestinians.
Yeah,
and Biden was like, screw that.
I know. I heard about that earlier this year or a few months ago. Yeah, I guess that would have been earlier this year. But yeah, I hadn't heard that until very recently. And it was very funny that like Hillary Clinton had like all the administration approved talking points and plans and everything. And Biden comes like, don't worry about that shit. Don't worry about that. Oh, that was pretty entertaining. Biden has always been kind of a loose cannon. That's kind of his thing, but it's pretty funny.
It is really interesting because like I'm looking at this entire presidency now in more of a large scale view and being like, okay, so like what do I actually feel about it compared to other presidencies? And I do feel like if it wasn't for Israel, I would say Biden is better than Obama, probably, and that's a good thing ostensibly. But God, I can't get over it. It's so bad. It's so bad. It's evil. It's terrible.
I said when this first happened many times, I've said many times on the show that I didn't think Biden had anything to worry about as long as this wrapped up before the summer, and it just keeps going on. I mean, I wasn't saying it was gonna, but it's like if it lasted until like August, then he'd have some problems. And this, well, I guess we can cover that now. We can go into the uncommitted stuff now.
I was gonna say, perfect segue. Yeah. So, all right, guys, we just talked about how Kamala Harris, the day before Super Tuesday, called for a ceasefire for the first time in this conflict between Israel and the poor citizens of Gaza. And that is very pointed because it's in direct response, I believe, to the undecided or uncommitted voting campaign that sprung up out of Michigan. And it is one of the stories that, it could be nothing. It could be a little bit of a flash in the pan activist campaign, but it clearly is making some hair stand on edge in the White House, in the Biden administration. Because in Michigan, on February 27th, we saw over 100,000 voters vote uncommitted, which is no chump change. It's 100,000 people in a primary that isn't competitive, voting to tell the president of the United States, we need you to move your position on this issue. I really can't think of any other time in American history, at least in my lifetime, I'll say, that anything close to that has ever happened. And then, I mean, that was an organized months-long campaign in a key swing state that has a high Muslim population and is very anti-Israel relative to other states. But then on Super Tuesday, we saw people scramble to organize uncommitted campaigns, and it was pretty darn successful. In Minnesota, over 18% of the Democratic primary chose not to commit to Biden. 80,000 voters in North Carolina chose uncommitted. This was a massive campaign. Like, it's hard to organize that many people that quickly, and it worked. And I'm telling you guys, I've never actually cared about a primary vote because I live in Pennsylvania, and ever since I've been able to vote, the primaries have been decided by the time it got to me. But I am excited to go to the polls in, I think it is, and cast my vote for uncommitted. But I don't know, how do you guys feel like this is we're getting a little excited over nothing here, or do you feel like this has some serious legs?
I think that it definitely, like we talked in the last or the other day about this, so the proof was in the pudding, that the Biden administration is paying attention to it now. They can't ignore it anymore. And it's like we've been over many times. This is the only leverage you have against people with positions of power, is to threaten, is the threat that you won't vote for them, because that's the most important thing they care about. And I will say that it does put them, I don't feel sorry for them, but I'm not saying that, but I'm thinking about, like, tactically, it puts them in a difficult situation. And I do see why, if you're looking at it just from politics, why they're a little slow to change. Now, morally, that's not the right decision, but I do get the political part, because you basically have three types of voters for the Democrats for the general election. You have the group of people who are going to vote for Democrat Biden, no matter what. Biden has their vote locked down. That is the vast majority of the Democratic electorate. And then you have the people who are saying, we are not going to vote for Biden as long as he doesn't call for a ceasefire and he keeps supporting the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And that's your uncommitted vote. But there's a third group that no one talks about that often. And that's the group of people who say, we are not going to vote for Biden if he does back the ceasefire. And that is the population he's worried about, because in their estimation, up until recently, that segment of the voting population was definitely bigger than the uncommitted. Not really uncommitted, but the people who say that they won't vote for him if he doesn't enact the ceasefire. Now, I don't know what that percentage is. I just looked up before we started the segment. I had the thought of what percentage of Democrats support a ceasefire, and it's about 75 or 80%, somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that there's 20% who are at least okay with the ceasefire not happening. I don't know how much of that 20% says, okay, if you back a ceasefire, I'm backing out. I don't know those numbers, but they apparently think those numbers are strong enough to, just kind of soft foot around this thing. What do you think, EK?
Yeah, I don't know. It like you said, it's difficult to measure that. I mean, it was difficult to measure the people like who were like, I'm not going to vote for Biden if he doesn't back a ceasefire happen, until the uncommitted thing came around. And was like, oh wait, like here's so let me back up just a little bit and say, like, I think it's really good because it's a way to say, hi, here, I'm a voter. I'm voting in a primary, and one of the things that traditionally does not have a high turnout. And I am like using my vote to tell you to knock this shit off. So like, I think that is an excellent thing to do. But like, you're right. There's no way, like, we can now measure those people, but there's no way to measure the people that maybe don't want the ceasefire to happen, that would traditionally vote for Joe Biden. But at the same time, I would love for them to feel that, hey, you need to vote for Biden. I don't care what your opinion is, like that people like me have been getting for the past 5 months, like for doing anything that or saying anything that's critical of Joe Biden, because like oh, so you're gonna support Trump then? I would love for all of that shit to be directed to them now and have them have to field those damn questions, because it is tiring as hell. Let me tell you, it's like, oh, she's supporting Trump. Like, no, I just think we need to be able to demand concessions from whoever is running for whatever elected office. You have to win my vote. You have to earn my vote. You have to make me want to vote for you. Like, if you're doing a bad job of that, then it's on me to tell you you're doing a bad job of that. I have a way, like we have a way of doing that now. Like, so I've lost my train of thought of where I'm going.
All right.
With this,
but EK, correct me if I'm wrong. Are you a teacher by trade?
I am not. Once upon a time, I was a substitute teacher.
Okay. Whatever. Like, I thought you might have been a teacher, but like what you just explained was like a teacher teaching a child how the democratic system works. Like the very just basics of what a representative democracy is. You, politician, do something. I, citizen, decide whether I like that thing or not, and then I express that opinion in the polls. And you know what? In our system, we have first past the post. I might need to vote defensively in the general. So the best place for me to express my dissatisfaction with our party's candidate is in the primary. And that is exactly where people went and did it. And what really pisses me off, because I can at least understand the people who are like, yo, guys, don't criticize Biden. It's going to hurt him in the general, and we can't risk a Trump presidency. I disagree with you, but I get the reasoning. But what the fuck why is John Fetterman, sitting United States Senator, coming out and criticizing the undecided? Like, this isn't like randoms on the internet. This is a sitting United States Senator coming out, and my senator, by the way, coming out and criticizing people for voting in the primaries. Like, that is when you're supposed to do it. I don't know when we're ever supposed to voice our concerns, if not literally in the primaries. It utterly blows my mind.
Yeah, it is sad to see when this happens, because it happens all the time. So I guess it's expected, but that politicians have this deep loyalty to the party and making sure the party looks good. And that's why people, they hate partisan politics, because of stuff like this, that they will defend any action as long as you don't criticize the candidate because you don't want to hurt the candidate, but it's really you don't want to hurt the party because you're going to hurt everybody else too and bring them down. Once again, I'm with John. I don't even think that's true. Because what's the point of the primary? Why bother having it in the first place? Like, if your whole thing is we need to make sure our candidate looks good so he gets elected, don't have a primary at all. Just have 6 months of kissing this guy's ass over and over again, saying how great he is. I mean, what's the point? And what annoys me on this is, well, like, this is a bitch fest about what's going on with the Democratic Party or whatever. What annoys me is this is actually the Democratic Party. This is other people, but hearing them talk about how, listen, they're leading this charge of trying to get Biden replaced. People, listen to me. Joe Biden is not going anywhere. I mean, this is not because, I'm saying it's good that Biden's there. I'm not saying that I'm saying this is reality. So you can talk about it all day long, but they are not going to replace Joe Biden. They're not going to replace him with Gavin Newsom. They're not going to replace him with Michelle Obama. Now, they could. This is the funny thing about primaries, is that the primary system as we know it is relatively new. And if you go back before the 1960s, the primaries were pretty much a closed process. The party delegates voted for these people. They didn't have like these statewide elections in most states. They almost didn't really exist. They wasn't really solidified to the 1960s. So the party could replace Biden if they wanted. I remember learning about this when Bernie Sanders was running, and when I learned what the actual laws of the Democratic Party were, that if they want, they can just put anyone on they want. Like the actual primary system we have is still relatively new. So, we can complain to the party all we want, but it's not a government organization. It is a private organization that's free to act however they wish.
Yeah, I think we should get to a place where we can actually replace someone, where it's not the incumbent. Like, the incumbent isn't guaranteed. And I mean, I know it's a traditional thing. It has always happened and everything, but come on, if the Republicans had a crystal ball that told them that Donald J. Trump was going to lose in 2020, best believe they would have put somebody else in his place. If there was a crystal ball that said that Jimmy Carter wasn't going to win in 1980, the Democratic Party would have put somebody else in his place. Same thing with George H.W. Bush. The Republican Party would have put somebody else in their place to have them not be a one-term president and then have, the opposing side win those elections. And I think with Joe Biden, you have so many people that do not want to vote for him, that still want to vote Democratic, putting things aside that they shouldn't put aside, still want to vote Democratic, and but they don't want him. And at this point, it's too late. I will concede that it is too late. We're just stuck with it. But we need to get to a point where it's okay, this person won the election, so now we have to vote for them in the next election. That's just gotta end. We have got to get past that.
It doesn't make any sense. And for those who are watching this right now, recorded, like you normally do on our YouTube channel, the normal YouTube videos. We are also recording these live on Thursdays when we record them. And we had a comment just come in on our live show from Lena saying that the notion of U.S. elections are where the working class is going to make political actions is a deeply false one. We need to vote to stave off fascism and work to build socialism outside the established system. So I kind of want to throw that to you. I want to discuss that. Is it possible? Obviously, we're used to just sluggish, slow progress and everything. Do you think it's possible that we can ever get there through the established electoral system? Or do you think there needs to be large-scale change before the electoral system in the U.S. can ever be a upstanding representation of the working class?
I don't think those are mutually exclusive. Honestly, I do get the sentiment that you're not going to vote your way into communism. I do understand that sentiment. However, the formulation of a game plan is very important here, and as of now, we don't have one that's like actually. Trust me, like my name might count as powers taken, not given. There's a reason it is called that. But in the current system that we have, I think a lot of times a problem we have on the left is that we overestimate how many of us there are. That's because we talk amongst ourselves. Yeah, all our friends are leftists, so we know a bunch of leftist creators. We went to college with people who are leftists, but we are essentially like the mirror image of like the 20%. We're probably not even 20%, like the 20% of the country that are the Christian right-wing evangelicals. We're the left-wing version of that, but there's probably fewer of us than them. So I would agree that relying on votes isn't really the way to go. And so your actions within your community and growing it out that way and putting in the work like the Republicans did, like starting back 70 years ago, or 70 years ago, is how we change. But we have to change the makeup of the country first before we can even have a decent argument about whether we can do it with votes or not. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah, like you cannot you cannot vote yourself out of fascism. Like yeah, it is highly unlikely you can vote yourself into socialism. Like there's got to be some sort of thing coming from the outside like that pushes that through or whatever. I think like going to grassroots and making as much change as you possibly can in your community is a big help to get some more leftist things through. Also, like, and I've been trying to work this out a little bit. I remembered like this like 5 years ago, Vox made this video about like Fox News, like the idea of Fox News in general, where because before Fox News, like you basically had like whatever your mainstream media source was, like, and they had their editor and whatever their biases were, because all media is biased, doesn't matter what side it's on, like, and whoever was the news editor there would basically make a decision about what to print, what to send out to the people. And then you have Fox News come around, and it's not really the news, but it's news like enough to where like you can present it as news. And then you basically have a lot of people on the right with like some of the crazy conspiracy theories or just like random takes that they have. And Fox News is airing it to the point that it's shifting the Overton window. And like now the mainstream media has to talk about what Fox News is talking about, even though it doesn't actually have any merit. And nothing like that exists on the left. So they're like, and nobody's got the billions of dollars to make a leftist version of Fox News, but something like a third party candidate running in every single state that has just enough publicity where they have to at least mention what someone else is saying on that side and get some coverage can shift things closer back, like to the left or to the middle or whatever, because we've got what you crazies are saying over here, and we got what you crazies are saying over here. With like, I agree with these crazies because they're like, hey, food should be free versus hey, we need to lock people up for like, I don't know, because they look shady. They look like they might have come from another country. So anyways, like we need something over here like to basically shift things back and like also give voice to some of the more left policies that people actually agree with. Like you said that like we're kind of the mirror image of like the Christian conservative people, like the opposite of them, but like they don't actually know all of what we're about. Like the same as I think a lot of the left intentionally avoids trying to understand what some of the people that are on the far right are about. Like it's misunderstanding like the intelligence of those people, or like trying to like paint them as the most idiotic people that you see in your random social media videos and stuff like that. Is doing both of us a disservice.
I want to say this before I forget, because I know I will, but you mentioned there's no left-wing version of Fox News, and you kind of pointed out there can't be. Like there actually can't be a left-wing version of Fox News, because you needed the money to create an apparatus like that. And what billionaire is going to be out there funding, 24-hour content about how workers need to seize the means of that? That is never going to happen. So we're at a huge disadvantage there. And I'm glad you brought up the third party again, because I was going to mention this too when you were talking about replacing incumbent candidates and how the Republicans would have replaced George Bush in '92. I don't know if they would have, but even if they did, I think they still would have lost because of Ross Perot. Ross Perot took a lot of. I can't remember how many votes he got, but it was a huge percentage of the. He didn't get any electoral votes, but his
the biggest of any third party ever.
It was massive, and so something like that, getting on the ticket for, it's actually gotten a lot harder to get on a ticket for a third party since then. A big coincidence, But it would need to be someone, ironically, like a Donald Trump, like someone who was already a celebrity, that already had high name recognition, who was wildly entertaining. Like the only person, he wouldn't be my ideal candidate, but like a Jon Stewart or a Jesse Ventura or something like that, someone who already has major name recognition, who's like entertaining as hell, and would run as a spoiler candidate. That could be something like that to get them, more used to the idea of the two parties. Sorry, John, I knew I'd forget that before you said that. Go ahead.
No. I wanted to just kind of give my opinion on the question I presented to wrap this topic up. But since you brought it up, yeah, I don't say this lightly. I say this with intense seriousness. If I could guarantee a Jon Stewart presidency, I would cut off a limb for it. Like if I knew, guarantee it, I'd make that sacrifice for this country, because that's exact. I've said it before, TJ, how there's nothing that has radicalized me more than the liberal moderacy of Joe Biden's presidency. But there's nothing that has made me more convinced that a socialist president could make substantial change than Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump proved to everyone, for all the world to see, that even an idiot can take on the administration if they hit the right note. They can. The Republicans did not want Donald Trump. Nope. All of the establishment powers on both the left and the right fought against Donald Trump. But once he consolidated that support and power, he can't get rid of it. Like no matter what he does, he's now the guy. And if we had someone like that on the left who just takes the presidency, it filters all the way down. Because you see the far right popping up in Congress now, constantly. The same thing would happen on the left, except those people wouldn't be incompetent idiots.
Cool. That was good. That might be two. That was kind of like two topics. I think that was. But that
it
was,
kind of was.
Yeah.
It might. Yeah, Justin. If this makes sense, if that makes sense,
that
makes videos. Because it told when I interjected there and said, hey, we're live. That could. Yeah, Justin, if you're listening to this, that might be two episodes.
I write it on the timestamp. It was 42:30 or something. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you very much, Lena, for contributing. If you're still here, hopefully she didn't miss that.
Yeah, Lena had another comment. I didn't pull it up because it related to another topic, so I will. But I will. But you see it, I'm sure. Yeah. But I was going to say about the. Oh yeah. So also, we didn't really delve into this, but it kind of fits well with the topic that we were talking about last time. That I have always say that I give right-wing conservatives all the respect in the world for, hitting the ground running and caring about the elections that aren't sexy, running for school board, running for, alderman, running for, city council, stuff like that, because they got in on the ground floor and they actually took over their own party. Like the Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan. It's not. Now, I'm not saying the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan is good. It wasn't at all. But the party that we have now, Ronald Reagan didn't give a shit about, drag queen story hour. I get you can search through all of the content. You're not going to find anything about it. And it's not like, drag queens and queer people didn't exist back then. Oh, he literally didn't care. The AIDS crisis hit and he didn't give a fuck. He was like, yeah, I don't give a shit about that or anything. And you can find pictures of Bernie Sanders supporting the queer community in the 80s. The Republican Party wasn't obsessed with this shit. And now they're obsessed with this weird culture war stuff. So they're relevant to it. But there's a reason for that, and that's because the inmates took over the asylum. So we could do that, like we could, rise up through the ranks, but it will take time, and we'll have to just not only pay attention when it's the presidential election and start paying attention to our greater community and what we can do there.
100%. No segue, but let's just jump right into introducing EK, and then we'll get to our next segment. So EK, as I said, I'm gonna start, then I'm gonna throw to you. You're just gonna say, "Hey, I'm EK. What you can find me at What's Good English on TikTok, Instagram, whatever you want to plug." And Lena said, "Thank you for the thoughtful responses."
You're welcome, Lena. Thank you for the comments.
Although thank you, Lena, very much. We'll be here every Thursday, or most Thursdays, and every Wednesday. But I want to say, TJ, when we record this, does it show those comments when you bring?
It might mess up Justin.
That's what I'm saying. So
okay. Well, all right. Yeah.
I haven't watched the live show from yesterday, but I don't know if they have.
So all right. So we won't pull it up during the segments then, only during the breaks because all right, cool.
And that's when we'll probably be talking with the analyst anyway. So we'll do that. All right. Let's go. All right, guys, thank you for watching another episode of The Left Wing. I'm John Cooper from Counterpoint Politics, and I cannot thank you enough. You are the reason that the algorithm shows our videos to other people. And if you happen to just be watching the episode we made this week about how we need to put more left-wing people into power, well, that is the one tiny thing you can do to contribute to that effort. Someone else who is contributing to that effort is our recurring guest and good friend, EK Powell. I want him to tell you exactly where you can find him if you haven't followed him already.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm EK Powell. I am What's Good English on YouTube, on Instagram, and on TikTok. I started out making a lot of content about African American English and basically linguistics thing, how linguistics is kind of used as a bit of a discriminator and stuff like that. But I also make a lot of political content now. Sort of got awakened by some other creators in the field, like these two wonderful gentlemen here, and just couldn't stay silent on some issues. So you'll see a little bit of language stuff and some political stuff, some economic stuff and stuff like that. For me, I've said stuff like so many times, but thank you so much for having me on the episode. I really appreciate it.
Hey, want to thank you all for watching the show, and I want to thank EK for doing the show in English, because he does not have to do that. The man speaks 9 languages. I'm not joking. So, you really did us a favor here by making this, intelligible to us morons up here. But thank you guys for watching the show. Feel free to check out the rest of our stuff. We have episodes that come out pretty much every day, and check out EK's content. We'd all appreciate it. Thanks so much. Right.
Okay,
I don't know if it's 9. I don't know if it's 9. It's a lot. I don't know if it's 9. Yeah. How many do you speak? Yes,
No, okay. I only fluently speak English and Spanish. I have my Chinese is okay. My Portuguese.
I'm a middling Chinese speaker.
My Chinese used to be a lot better. It's kind of bad now. I speak this weird. So I speak Portuñol because I used to speak Portuguese okay, but when I learned Spanish and got fluent in Spanish, it overwrote all of the Portuguese that I have. So I basically speak Spanish with a Portuguese accent and use a few Portuguese words, and I get by with that. I'm learning French right now, so my French is okay. And what's another one?
He doesn't remember how many languages.
Yeah. Well, I know bits and pieces of Japanese from 20 years ago when I was trying to teach myself Japanese. It's not really that great.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. You're working your way through the Romance languages, though. You got Spanish now, and you got Portuguese. You're getting French. You have Italian and Romanian left, and then you've got the Infinity Stones of the Romance languages.
Once you get one, the other ones kind of unlock a little bit.
I'd imagine.
See the Matrix.
I wanted to
guys, I'll be right. I gotta use the bathroom real quick.
No problem.
Bathroom break time. But keep talking.
So I saw, pretty sure Reagan showed a film for the military that had a drag queen. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. You knew that? Oh, okay. I know. Yeah, that's interesting. Reagan was I mean, he was a Hollywood guy, and we all know about Nancy Reagan. Am I right, folks? Am I right? I mean, come on. I always know that Nancy Reagan. People. So for those of you who are unaware, Nancy Reagan was known for being the throat goat, the head doctor, the whatever term you want to use for it of California and Hollywood and everything. And it's the one. It's the one. How do I put it? It's like the one decision of Ronald Reagan that I can't criticize. It's like, okay, good choice there. But it's also the only nice thing I can say about Nancy Reagan. As far as I know, that is her only
sloppy toppy everyone.
Right. It's her only positive contribution to humankind, as far as I know. So, respect where respect's due. And in typical fashion, like the one good example of judgment I can think of Ronald Reagan was for something that only benefited him and nobody else. So yeah, all right. That falls right into place for Ronald Reagan. But no, I didn't know about him showing film for the military with the drag queen. Wait, was the drag queen the bad guy? Because that's important. Like, was it shitting on the drag queen?
Like a musical theater sort of thing, or like it was like one of those USO shows or something. Like I've seen clips of it, but I've never seen like the full thing to identify what exactly it was. But yeah, he did do drag for the military for like some show or something like that he was in.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, on the subject of Ronald and Nancy, though, Madeline Pendleton put out a podcast episode, like basically on like the history of Reagan and how he became like that. And basically, the story is that like he was actually like pretty left leaning like early on until he met like Nancy, and like her family was like super conservative and like super like pro business, whatever. And like I'm trying to remember exactly how this was phrased. It's been like a couple months since I heard the story, but basically like there was they lied to him saying like there were all these different like leftist meetings and stuff that were going on that he wasn't being invited to, and these people weren't actually his friends, and like he took that personally. So, and that was basically his red pill moment, which shifted him like further like way right and started doing all of the deregulation and is responsible for like the capitalist hellscape that we're living in right now. It's the name of her podcast is Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. I think the Ronald Reagan expose episode is from like January, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. But yeah.
She makes great content. I've seen her content for a long time, and her Madeline Pendleton, hers is incredible. It's funny. I'd heard that maybe in a video she made. I heard someone mentioning that, and essentially, like those conversations with Nancy Reagan's family was Ronald Reagan's version of Barack Obama making fun of him at that White House press dinner or something. That's like, all right, now I got to be a radical conservative now. That was his red pill moment of, you're 21 and you've never gotten laid, and so now you're going to be, this misogynistic fascist. And that it's funny how major events of the world are just twisted by like the most boring minutia possible.
Yeah, fragile ego. Oh, I'm gonna go cause a whole lot of people to die now.
All right, so I don't know if I should show this comment. Yeah, I'll show this comment now before we do the clip. So, Lena commented earlier, a centrist equals a right-wing Christo-fascist. That plays a lot into what we're going to talk about in this next topic with the centrist. So, let's get going here. Ladies and gentlemen of the United States of America, I would like you all to bend your knees and bow your head, because 3 American heroes have decided they will no longer be serving in the United States Congress. The Senate, to be specific. We need to honor the great work of Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, and Mitt Romney, who have all decided that it's quits for them. They're done. They have served their country honorably, and we are proud for all the work that they have done, and they're moving on with their life. And John had sent out an Axios article talking about for the show, talking about how this is the death knell of centrism. In fact, the article was so annoying just reading it, how they're talking about, oh, this is the death of bipartisanship. And I don't know if you guys saw Kirsten Sinema's speech when she talked about how she was leaving Congress. I don't recommend you guys to watch it. It's probably torture under the Geneva Convention somewhere. But she was mentioning how, I believe in civility and I believe in working together to get stuff done. And apparently that's just not acceptable in the United States Senate. I was like, get the fuck out of here. Literally, get the fuck out of here. I'm glad you're leaving. But when people they're being lauded, I can't stand it. And we had a comment earlier that we showed during the break. A commenter, Lena, wrote that centrist equals right-wing Christo-fascist. And a lot of times it does. Like, I wouldn't call Sinema or Manchin a right-wing Christo-fascist, but they certainly are not in the center. Not as far as
they certainly aren't unwilling to work with right-wing Christo-fascists.
Exactly. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. You remember when Sinema voted down, I think it was a $15 minimum wage, and she went and patted McConnell on the shoulder to get his attention, then did the thumbs down and everything. Yeah, they seem really, really interested in making sure that the right-wing Christo-fascists get what they want. And I really can't stand, I talk about all the time how we have this innate and culturally acceptable lauding of people, in the United States military, like they're the Avengers or something. And every time a soldier comes, with a bow and, thank them and everything. We do the same thing for politicians, which is weird because people pretend that we don't like politicians. But every time one of them quits their noble profession, they act like they're doing this for the good of the country. No, for the most part, you're doing it because you can't win re-election, which is definitely true for Manchin and Sinema. They have no chance. Manchin is getting chased out of town. So is Sinema. And Romney is actually just retired. Like, that guy, and if anyone could be called a centrist, Romney would be the closest. Well, ironically enough, Romney's going to come out looking the best of these three people that we're going to talk about. But Manchin is definitely gonna be all right. His family owns a what's it called? I wrote down Inner Systems, which is a coal company, and Manchin makes $500,000 a year from his family's coal industry. And by the way, just for good measure, he's the chairman of the Senate Energy and I can't read my writing here, Energy and Natural Resources Committee. So I'm sure there's no conflict of interest there. So he's going to be fine. Sinema, I'm not sure. A lot of people say that Sinema is going to, drop out and get a lobbying position, because that's one of the two things you get when you run for Congress or you're in the Senate and you're there for a while. You get a lobbying gig, or you get like a corporate, consultancy. Now, I don't think lobbyist is in the cards for her, because the whole point of being a lobbyist is that you have good connections and friendships with people in the Senate, and she's burned all those bridges. So it's definitely going to be for money. Romney is literally just, he's like, I'm 76 years old, and he looks great for 76. I got to give the guy credit. He looks,
unfortunate.
I know. I hate to say it.
Gotta call a spade a spade.
Right, exactly. I hate to say it.
76-year-old.
Right? Yeah. He's like, what? He's only like 4 years younger than Joe Biden. Come on. I mean, it's a guy looks great. And I did see him talking. Now, he has become a bit of a pariah in the Republican Party. A lot of the Trump Republicans hate the guy. Your average Republican doesn't despise Mitt Romney. It's like the hard right ones do. But he literally is just I'm 76, I don't know much how long I have left. And so Mitt Romney gets to retire and live with his family and enjoy his golden years. You probably won't, but let's be happy. Let's be happy Mitt Romney can. So, EK, I'll throw it to you. What do you think of the sacrifice of these brave American heroes? Let's hear it.
Fuck them. That is, no, I got smoke for all three of them. So, okay. Antonin Scalia dies during Obama's presidency. Like, Mitch McConnell and the Senate block Obama from replacing his seat on the Supreme Court. Oh, you can't do it. It's an election year. It's not the right thing to do. Mitch Romney comes out there. He's like, hey, if the same situation were to happen, it's reversed and it's on our side, I wouldn't let that go through either. Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, trying to symbolically retire from her seat so that the first female president ever can appoint another female justice like into her seat, which effectively ended up costing us Roe v. Wade and having that overturned, because Chief Justice Roberts was against Roe v. Wade being overturned. If you recall, that was a 5-4 decision. He was okay with cutting back abortion rights, but he wasn't all right with getting the whole thing like overturned. So that would have been 5-4 the other way if she would have just retired under Obama. I got smoke for RBJ
I got smoke for dead people.
All of them, yeah. Got smoke for. I got other smoke for her that I'm not gonna mention here. But like, yeah, and
she's gonna come haunt you.
Anyway, like that happens, and like that happens in like in 2020. And there was a bunch of Democratic senators saying, "Hey, y'all did the same thing to us when Scalia, like died, and like y'all told Obama he couldn't do it. Like y'all need to do the same thing with Trump." Like there was an extra swing senator that was needed, like to help block that vote, and Mitt Romney was like, "Hey, I know I said I would do this, but actually, Amy Coney Barrett's all right."
And, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that happened. Yeah, like I know he was out there doing a little bit of lip service, saying Black Lives Matter during the 2020 protests and all that stuff, but like, no, fuck him. Kristen Sinema, during the whole like when the Build Back Better bill, or not Build Back Better, when the what was the tax bill thing that the Senate actually passed. Shoot, hold on, I have it written down. I have it saved. Let me find it, because I wanted to look up specifically to figure out what this thing, the Inflation Reduction Act. That's like in 2022, like when they finally had Joe Manchin on board and everything, it's about to go through, and she holds it up because she was against the earned tax like loophole being filled, which was going to fund the bill. Like the money from that bill was going to be closing a tax loophole that a bunch of corporations and super rich people were taking advantage of, like to just get themselves tons and tons of money, like that they didn't have to pay taxes on. They were going to close that loophole, and like closing that loophole was going to give them basically the hundreds of millions of dollars that they needed to like fund some of the stuff that was going to happen in that bill. She got that taken out, like for their corporate interest in there. Like she just wanted to cost cuts. Whatever she got elected for in the first place, like she basically sold her soul to corporate donations and everything else. Like whatever the hell she's doing, like in the future, fuck her. Like as soon as the Senate had like 50 Democrats, she was like, "Oh, screw this! I'm not one of y'all no more. I'm independent. Fuck you." Joe Manchin. How is it that there is a coal baron that is a Democratic senator? Like
it's like you couldn't write it in a movie, EK. Like literal coal baron.
Exactly. What stage of capitalism allows a coal baron to be part of the People's Party, right?
The working class party, yeah.
Yeah, so when they had the whole Build Back Better plan, and the infrastructure bill was attached to the climate change stuff and everything, they wanted to go ahead and do this bill, and like Joe Manchin, they gave the climate part to him specifically because he's a coal baron, and they gave it to him to write so that he could still take care of himself, because he's a walking conflict of interest in the Democratic Senate or whatever. And he's writing the bill, and the infrastructure is attached to the climate change stuff, and like he just can't see a way through it. And then him and Biden talk, and like he convinces Biden to separate the infrastructure from the climate change.
Oh, I forgot about that.
All the other stuff that was in the Inflation Reduction Act. And like people, like Democratic senators, AOC was like, "Biden, do not do that. He can just completely screw you over." And Biden was like, "Nah, I believe him. Like we had a handshake deal. We spoke man to man," and they separated it. They passed the infrastructure, and what did Joe Manchin do? Like, "I can't do this." Went on fucking Fox News and was like, "I can't do it. I can't." You had Republican senators saying, "Hey man, if you want to flip seats, you can come caucus with us. You can be on our side." Like what? Like no, fuck you for that. And like for the extra fuck you for Sinema and Manchin, when there was a majority in the House of Representatives, a Democratic majority, and a Democratic majority in the Senate. The reason we didn't have all sorts of Democratic bills sliding through was because those two senators didn't want to overthrow the filibuster. They had the votes to do it. All they had to do was just overthrow the filibuster. You had a majority in Congress. You had a Democratic majority throughout the whole thing. Kamala would have done the tiebreak on every single bill. It could have passed all types of legislation. And they said, nope, not going to do it. Joe Manchin even talked about like the great person or whoever who had his seat before him, who proudly used the filibuster in the past, but he used it against civil rights. The filibuster was fucking designed so that senators could grandstand and not have to pass civil rights. That is what it was historically used for. Its history is racist AF. And he's talking about some racist ass senator doing racist shit, trying to honor that. So, well, I want to be like him. They could have done it back in 2022 when Roe v. Wade got overturned.
Yep.
Roe v. Wade was overturned in was it June of 2022? They still had a majority in the Senate. They could have been like, all right, fuck this. Let's go ahead and get rid of this filibuster shit, and let's go ahead and enshrine abortion rights for everyone. Let's enshrine some of this other stuff that people are trying to take care of. They knew that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned because there was that huge leak, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. So fuck them. Fuck all three of them.
Yo, EK, that diatribe belongs like in the Louvre or something, right next to the Mona Lisa. Like the recording, that was incredible. I tip of the cap, sir. That was amazing. Thank you. I feel bad you were holding that in for half the show.
We should have started.
It must have been eating you. That was great. I appreciate it. John, it's gonna be tough to follow that up, but the unenviable task is yours.
It is tough. EK. Usually when we have a guest that like goes on and on and on, I'm like, okay, we gotta stop and we gotta do. And I was just like, no, keep going, man.
But never crossed our mind.
The two things I wanted to specifically respond to in that. One, Kirsten said, and kind of going back to what you said, TJ, I don't get how she works. Because like I get Manchin, he's a fucking coal baron. He's gonna stop you from doing climate change policy. That makes sense to me. Sinema, she was a freshman congressman, right? Like she's in and out in 4 years, and like not or a little more than 4 years, and like what does she get out of that? Like she must have been directly paid. Like it must have been very quid pro quo, because usually it's like, oh, we're gonna just do the things that are going to help our donors. We're going to stay in power. She's in and out. Like she can't become a lobbyist. Everyone hates her. She just burned all the bridges. I just don't know what she did it for. It just doesn't make any sense. But anyway.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. Like
maybe one day we'll have her on the show and she can explain her stuff. The other thing I wanted to say is there was a quote from Manchin here, and he said, well, shit, I just had it up. Oh, so here we go. Quote, "You lose the center, you lose the moderates, you're screwed. You're really screwed. I'm hoping the voters will wake up." And it's just like, why? Why is that the case? Why is it that this is the only scenario where we feel like, oh, the middle must be right? Like, yeah, I agree with you that usually when you have two extremes, the correct answer is somewhere in between them. But that doesn't mean it's smack dab in the middle. The correct answer might be close to one of the extremes. And so if you are negotiating with people near the other side of the extreme, you're just pulling yourself farther away from the right answer. And that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense when someone is a literal insurrectionist to work with them. It doesn't make sense when someone advocates for fascism to work with them. It shouldn't be a sign of respect that you are able to bring the Republicans to the table and work something out. Why is that never applied to the progressives? Why is it that like we don't like give this respect to liberal leaders who can work with the progressives? That's who they should be working with. That's who they should want to work with, and because they're more similarly related. But they always seem to sing the praises of people who work with the fascists. It makes no fucking sense.
It doesn't. And that's always frustrated me too, because that sentiment that well, we have two sides, and I'm sure they're both reasonable. And so, we'll cooler, rational thoughts will prevail, and tempers will settle down. Because, we all know the truth is in the middle. What's right is in the middle. That is a shockingly common sentiment among the American populace, and talking about, well, the right and the left, they're both horseshoe theory folks,
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to point out, I was like, okay, can you tell me, like, any historical figures that you look up to, how many of them would you say were centrist in their time? Like, how many? The list is pretty short of people like, oh, we're so glad that was a great compromise. Good job. I mean, that's not how it works. Like,
I'm genuinely trying to think of an
right,
answer to your question, TJ.
I'm sure you can find some. I'm sure
Mr.
you
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, Mr. Rogers. Well, no, Mr. Rogers wouldn't even count. Remember when seen that picture where he has like a kid's pool, and he has his shoes off and he's got his feet in there, and he has it there with the black guy? Like, that was
was that a big thing?
Yeah, it was a controversial thing back then, because you guys ever hear the things about black folks can't swim? There's a reason for that, and it's because black
community go all the way back to Mr. Rogers.
Well, I mean, it ties into the water thing. Okay. So yeah, that would be weird if Mr. Rogers was connected. but swimming pools didn't exist in black communities, and they were only in white. And then people who had pools in their own houses were already rich and less likely to be black folk. And there were whenever desegregation happened, white communities would shut down swimming, but they filled them with concrete rather than share them with black people. And like, you've all seen the picture, I'm sure, of like the guy like pouring battery acid or something into a pool when black folk were in it. Like, black folk weren't around water much, and so like desegregating swimming pools was still like a major issue. So him doing that was, oh yeah, look at this. And so yeah, even Mr. Rogers wouldn't have been like considered like a centrist person. But something I wanted to go out. EK, I didn't know about this thing with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that she stayed on because she wanted to be.
You not know that, TJ?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Symbolic reasons. The woman had so many damn health problems in the end, and
that is fucking wild. We talked about trivial things that alter the course of history. I didn't know it'd get that trivial. That is. I mean, look. No, I don't get it. I try to think about it. I don't get it. Like, that symbolism isn't worth it. If I'm 88 years old and I've already like beaten cancer twice, I am not rolling the dice, that I'm going to live through this and my candidate's going to. No, that's insane. I got the smoke for her too. And what I got written down here? Oh, cinema. John, you were talking about it. Kirsten Sinema has been fascinating to me for a lot of the reasons we just talked about. Is that generally, when you have someone in a position of power, like in the Senate, you have a trade-off. Hey, you do well for me, I'll put a bunch of money into your campaign and make sure you get reelected. And she was young. Like, I don't think she was 50 years old, or she's not dead. I don't think she's 50 years old. She could be in the Senate for a very long time. And I'll donate a bunch to a super PAC, and you can keep this seat perpetually. That's usually the trade-off. The other trade-off is like the Paul Ryan way, that you stay in office for a while and then you cash out with a corporate consulting job, which is just free money because they have access to your knowledge of the system and the people that might be about, maybe not even in the Congress, but people in government that can help you out. Sinema could help out with the first part because she definitely has those connections. Like, it's not just limited to the Senate. She could never be a lobbyist, so that wouldn't help them out at all. But Sinema coming in, if you watch like any clips of her from before she was served in Congress or the Senate, she seemed to be like a decent leftist or progressive. Like, her rhetoric seemed on point. And I remember whenever she was being sworn in, I don't know if you guys remember this, and it came out that she was the Senate's first openly bisexual member. And did you guys see the pictures of Mike Pence swearing her in? And I saw these memes talking about, oh, look how uncomfortable Mike Pence looked. He looked like Mike Pence. I remember watching this and like, you guys are reading into this. Like, that's just Mike Pence. That's what he looks like all the time. I don't know why. And that annoyed me because, listen, like, representation is good. Like, we all know, we all agree, having people of color, having people of the queer community, represented in media or in government, that is a good thing. It's not the only thing though. And so when she hadn't served a day yet, and putting all that stock into that kind of bothered me. Turns out she turned out to be a dud. And so that kind of weird. But Sinema is a weird one. I don't really know. Manchin, EK, I want to bring this up to you because you mentioned how Manchin is a walking conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is an interesting term to me, is why I'm bringing it to you, because it's not a conflict of interest at all. It is a convergence of interest. It is like that's what it is. It's a weird term. It's like, no, this is very convenient for Joe Manchin. There's no conflict whatsoever. So I always thought that, I think that's an interesting term. But yeah, it's just pretty odd. One thing about Joe Manchin, because you're right. Whenever that happened, I had forgotten so much. That's how awful these folks are. You forget the stuff that they did. But when the Republicans are flirting with Manchin, say, "Hey, man, why don't you just become a Republican?" That was really funny to me, because it showed, what kind of person Joe Manchin was. Also, it was a dumb request by the Republicans, because as the senator who's in the Democratic Congress, who's like on the cusp, he has immense fucking power. He was essentially the president of the United. Why would he give that away to give the Republicans a 51 seat? Then he's useless. Like, why do they want that at all? So it's funny that they were dumb enough to make that request. Like, his only option was to leave, and he's big. He fulfilled the American dream. He scammed people, and he made a bunch of money off his family. And there's no better representation of American than Joe Manchin. I don't know what you guys got to say about that.
I'm just going to say, I want to, because we've gone on for a little bit with this segment, but I want to kind of circle it all back to the premise of the article that you mentioned that I originally sent over, TJ, is the centrists getting out. I think it's kind of bullshit. There's plenty of centrists. Joe Biden is one of them. He's the president of the United States. But I wanted to take that idea seriously. If the center fizzled out and we were left with a party of the relatively far left, and I'm not talking like full-on communists, but like, Nordic system fucking leftists and MAGA Republicans, I feel like that'd be a very good deal for us, because the thing about us is that our policy is very popular. People really like universal health care, free weed, universal pre-K, free education. Like, people like these things. People hate fascism. And it would be an utter destruction. We would get everything we wanted if the center actually got out of here. And that's why we always say the liberals are just the fucking stopgap ratchet in our democracy, because they stop us from moving left. Because that's what would happen. Am I crazy there? Does that seem like a crazy take? That if we actually had only extremists, the left would dominate?
I mean, it depends. Oh, go ahead, BK.
It's so, like, one, the Democratic, like, nearly everyone in the Democratic Party is a centrist of some sort.
Let's say we have the entire Democratic Party is Bernie Sanders, and the entire Republican Party is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Who wins that election?
Yeah, when you put it that way, okay. When you put it that way, because I was thinking, because like there's some places, like the Senate's the main problem, like it always is. That if Marjorie Taylor Greene ran in Wyoming, she'd win. If she ran in Idaho, she'd win. Yeah, man. Oh God, I don't know. It depends, because here's the thing: if it wasn't Marjorie Taylor Greene and it was a far right winger with like a personality, like say it was Trump, like say instead of Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's Trump, then yeah, we'd actually be in trouble. I think because the Senate is so wildly anti-democratic. But that's an interesting concept, though, because that's kind of what we're banking on is becoming the actual representation of the left wing of the nation. And it's funny that I'm tepid against this, because this is literally what I'm fighting for. But it's funny, but I think the same thing. But of course I went to doomerism. But yeah, I'm with you, John. I like it.
Yeah, I think like if it was just the actual far left extremists versus the actual far, I think the far left would win every time, because it's like, hey, dude, we want free food. Like, is gonna trump over we want everybody to be broke and homeless every single time. So, like, with the exception of a charismatic leader stepping in and be like, actually, I have no problem with giving everybody free food, but not those people. That's where the danger comes in.
Yeah,
the charisma has like does all of the heavy lifting for you when nothing else will work. Because like all Republicans run on right now are the culture war issues, because their economic policy is horrible. Like, none of them can get on a microphone and say, all right, Like Trump wants to cut the corporate tax down to like what 15%, like give even more money to these corporations that are getting on a microphone with their whole chest and telling people we're gonna have surge pricing at Wendy's, like, or you guys should eat cereal for dinner. You guys should like, hey, I notice poor people usually do this one thing where they eat cereal for dinner, and you guys are complaining that regular groceries are too expensive right now. You guys should eat cereal for dinner like the poor people. Like you got CEOs getting on microphones saying that shit right now. That's the stage of capitalism that we are currently in. So like people sprouting out, like the Republican economic policy is what enabled that to happen. Like tracing that all the way back to Reagan when he was cutting tax rates and like getting rid of the law against stock buybacks and everything. Like, but charisma makes that happen too. So it's I think it would be cool. I would prefer it to be like that, but like charisma is a dangerous thing.
It is.
From what I'm hearing, we are officially forming the donut party, where we just cut out the center and pray for the best. So all right. Cool.
Good stuff. That was great. That was really fun.
I was if you were to like if I were to place bets on which one of these segments would be the longest, I would not have bet that
right
one.
Yeah,
I didn't expect EK to come in with the haymakers.
EK came in, holy shit. I mean, that was like some Street Fighters, like Hadouken, just right up in the face. That was amazing shit, man. That was you mentioned the cereal for dinner thing. That was so funny. And once again, like you can't help but laugh at this shit.
It's an onion headline. Like
yeah,
right, onion headline.
Right. Like, it's just, where do these guys get the balls? Like, where do they get the ball? You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me back during the pandemic where you had that guy go on Fox News. He was talking to Laura Ingraham, and they were talking about, paying people to stay home during the pandemic. And he goes, we need to dry this up because like the best dog is a hungry dog, to make sure people went back to work. We got to make sure they're hungry. It's like, I just can't.
How do you not just punch him? How does the hurt? Like, how do you not just? I want to punch him. I'm a fucking pacifist, but like, if someone said that to my face, I would get violent.
Yeah, it's like if I was in that position, like let's say I was some CEO richer than God, I had power over all these people, I was helping craft, policy to enrich me every day. The last thing I would ever do is go on TV and tell poor people how they're pieces of shit. They need to get back to work. I wouldn't say a word. I wouldn't say a goddamn thing. And if I did say anything, it would be what people used to do. Is like, I have nothing but the utmost respect for the working class. They are the backbone of this nation. Like that's what I would be doing. But these guys like lack the self-awareness. Like they're being Marie Antoinette like in front of millions of people, and it's wild to watch. Like I can't believe it.
They know they're insulated from it. They know they'll be okay either way, and like that much money like basically has an effect of like turning you like against or of completely isolating you from what normal society is, from what normal thought is. Like it's poison it, and it makes them, it emboldens them to say stuff like that. Or when you and everyone around you, everyone travels in your circle is like that, you start to look at everyone else, especially those poor people who are working for you, is like, as like ants, and they deserve to be where they are. Which also something else that Joe Manchin said. I think it was back in 2020 as well, when people were talking about giving people more aid or more money or something like that. And like Joe Manchin was like, no, people are just going to spend it on drugs. Like that's what his actual quote was. Like, they're just going to spend it on drugs. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure people will spend a lot of that on drugs. Insulin is expensive AF. Like, you gotta try to buy an EpiPen, you got to buy a new EpiPen every year. Those things are like what, $5,000-$10,000 or something like that. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of that aid would get spent on drugs. Joe Manchin, you're right.
It was the child tax credit. That's what it was.
I'm also going to spend the money on drugs, so they might as well have it too.
It was the child tax credit. That's what it was. And Joe Manchin said that, these people are going to spend it on, hunting trips and drugs is what he said. Either hunting and fishing trips or hunting trips and drugs. And I'm with you guys. Look, yeah, I'm okay with people taking the money and going on hunting trips. I am. I'm a terrible person, I know. And by the way, I don't know if we can say it on YouTube, whatever, but if they want to, get inebriated through illicit substances, I don't care about that either. Like, I really don't. Like, it's low on my list. It's kind of like how like the right wing is just obsessed with the idea that some undeserving poor person is going to take advantage of this system. So let's guarantee a system where some apparently fully deserving rich person takes advantage of. That's perfectly fine. That's what their entire philosophy.
Smart. They're being smart businessmen.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the so it's okay when they rob the system, but like the single mom down the street, I don't want it from her. It's also like I feel like we bring this up like twice a month, but it is hilariously evil that stock buybacks that are illegal. I just, there's no good defense of this whatsoever. It is artificial inflation of stock simply to enrich yourself. That's it. Like, it's an unstable system that was illegal since the Great Depression for a reason, like for a very good reason. And Reagan's like, nah, just get rid of that. And of course we've had economic collapse after economic collapse in ever receding lengths of time ever since then. And also not a coincidence. And I wanted to point out Lena's comment.
I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. So before we got to the next segment, I prefer fishhook theory, which places the center alongside the extreme right. I agree. What do you want to say about that, John?
I've never heard of fishhook, and I'm confused to how it places the center. I'm thinking of a fishhook, and it feels like it's also like a horseshoe.
No,
I'm confused by the analogy.
So like you have the horseshoe is like the extreme right and the extreme left, and they're close to each other.
Yeah, I get the horseshoe. So I understand that. The
fishhook
feels like a fishhook looks exactly the
same.
same.
So fishhook is like extreme left here, extreme right here, and the center is right there. They're right next to each other. So yeah, the center. They're so yeah, that's the fishhook theory. So I agree. Yeah, I'm with you on fishhook theory. I say I
was
agree.
thinking of a much more circular fishhook.
It's a fish ring. If you
yeah. I haven't fished in years. So.
Joe Manchin, if you're hearing this,
Joe Manchin, I have not.
John will not be going fishing with child tax credit money.
The drugs, maybe. The fishing, no. I enjoy fishing. I just don't live near enough.
All right. Okay. We're going to close out here by honoring another great American hero. Okay. I have the tendency to open this segment the same way. It's kind of the same thing. All right. All right, everyone. I don't know if you've heard yet, but Nikki Haley has dropped out of the Republican primary. She fought a good fight, and I got to tell you, credit where credit's due. I would not have picked her as the last one standing going into it. I wouldn't have guessed that it would have been her. And we wanted to take this segment to honor the hard work she did in trying to put a nicer face on American fascism. Like, yeah, this she deserves some credit for everything she put in here. So she did win 89 delegates, which once again, if I would have bet, I wouldn't have bet she would have won any for that matter. But she did win a state too. I think she won Vermont. Did you guys see that? I think she won Vermont on Super Tuesday. And which she also won Washington, D.C. So at least those two, which once again, more than I thought. I wanted to commend some of my favorite moments from Nikki Haley. Most of them are going to be from the primary, and one is from before the primary, but it was so good I couldn't leave it out. Do you guys remember when she was debating and what's his name? Vivek Ramaswamy made that comment about how we don't need Dick Cheney in high heels, which was a shot at Nikki Haley because, she was in the UN and everything, and she has all these defense contract buddies. But then he made it a double by switching. It's like, and by Dick Cheney and heels, I'm referring to Ron DeSantis, which was really funny. A good joke is a good joke. I don't care who it comes from.
It was such a good joke.
That was amazing. Like the pinnacle of Vivek Ramaswamy. We used to do a lot of Vivek Ramaswamy videos because they always got a bunch of views. So we made me do that.
We might put Vivek Ramaswamy on the thumbnail of
this
video,
exactly.
Just so it gets more views.
People love Vivek for some reason. But Nikki Haley came back with just a zinger of a comeback saying that, yeah, I wear high heels, but only as ammunition. A comeback that didn't make any sense at all. Like it's she probably meant to say, yes, I wear high heels, but as a weapon, that would have made sense and that would have been good. But she fucked it up and said, yeah, she's not quick on her feet, because of the heels and all. But she very famously, she very famously couldn't answer the question of what started the American Civil War. She was asked by Someone she called a plant from the Democratic Party who asked a very simple, like 5th grade history question. That doesn't speak well of you, Nikki, if you can't answer that. And I loved how quick this guy was too. Speaking of being clever, is she gave this long meandering answer. Trump referred to it as, like she said, like 3 paragraphs of bullshit. And the guy said, I'm amazed you could say all that and never say the word slavery once. That was a great response. That was incredible. So honorable mention, whoever that guy was with this as well. And she also stood by this comment that America has never been a racist country. And even as she pointed out the racism that she experienced growing up as an Indian American in South Carolina, and like several stories about it. But, I don't believe America was or is a racist country, even though, yes, I saw it firsthand, living in fucking South Carolina. And the one I brought up, I wanted to bring up, this is from before she ran for president. But I don't know if you guys saw this clip, but it's a clip from Nikki Haley speaking at APAC. We come full circle, folks. We come back to APAC. And she was bragging about the fact that while she was an ambassador to the UN, she got a person that was serving? He was serving this position in the UN, and he was a Palestinian. And she was bragging about how she got him fired because he was a Palestinian, saying that, she didn't believe it was right. And she forced his resignation, wrote a letter and saying, as long as I'm ambassador under the Trump administration, I don't think any Palestinian should hold any position in the UN because the United States doesn't recognize Palestine at all. So basically, as EK would say, fuck them. So yeah. So, I mean, look, no loss to the nation from Nikki Haley. It's kind of sad that so many people are referring to her as, like the savior of the Republican Party. If only we had Nikki Haley. And like, thank God she isn't the nominee, because she would win. Like, she would definitely beat Biden because, people vote on vibes. Victory. Yeah, people vote on vibes. So we've gone many times. But John, I'll go to you. What do you think with the dearly departed Miss Haley?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's dearly departed. Like, I think that she's she's in a better position now than she ever has been. Like, she is now the number 2. Like, she kind of replaced Ron DeSantis as the Trump heir apparent, and she's placed herself as not Trump. That's the very important part. So if I'm Nikki Haley right now, all of this has gone according to plan. I stayed in the race past the point the other people would be, so I could take that number 2 pole position for long enough to stay in the headlines. I position myself as the anti-Trump candidate for when Trump either he loses and the party theoretically abandons him, as much as I like hesitate to say that. I think it's most likely that GOP voters will abandon Trump if he loses again. It just isn't viable. Similarly to how like we didn't abandon Bernie, but like we're not pushing for Bernie to run again. It's just not going to work. And so like, yeah, if that happens, if the most likely scenario plays out, Donald Trump loses, she is now the 2028 front runner. Like, and it's not even close. There's not even a close second. And by 2028, it'll change, but she's sitting pretty. She's not dearly departed. She's exactly where she wants to be. The only thing I'll say that is surprising, I'm surprised she dropped out at all. If I'm Nikki Haley, I'm spending an extra couple $1 million on the off chance that Trump either like has serious legal problems that stop him from being able to run, or just happens to die because he's old. Like if that again, it's a small chance. Let's say it's a 0.05% chance that Trump dies between now and September. But like, fuck, what happens then? I'm staying on the ticket and I'm making my case, and it's going to cost me a couple $1 million. What's that to me? And by me, I mean my donors. So like, what's, I don't understand why she dropped out. It doesn't make sense to me. EK,
I think you're lowballing that estimate. There's at least a solid percentage point that the guy is like 78 and he's 300 pounds. He's nothing but Big Macs. Come on, like that. It would not surprise me at all that Trump died. So yeah,
EK, I want to hear what you say, and I'm going to look up what the odds are that
the betting odds.
Yeah.
She has no charisma. And you're fighting someone who only has charisma. like he's operating his ultimate weapon, charisma, and like she has nothing to stand against that. Like, two, I have no idea what her policy is that isn't Trump. You know, like she's not Trump, but like that's like Biden is also not Trump. Like, how are you not Trump in a way like that is enough to differentiate you from like actual Trump? Like you're Republican, not Trump. Okay, great, but like there's nothing else. Also, like her stance on union and like how where she's from, what, West Virginia, right? And like how
South Carolina.
South Carolina, sorry, I get my my East Coast states like all foggy. But yeah, she's from South Carolina, and she's bragged several times about how like weak the union is in her state and how weak she's made like different workers unions in her state in an age of the union coming back and union strength coming back and union solidarity, everybody talking about the UAW and having tons of respect for Sean Thane. And like you even had Trump go to, like, he didn't break the picket line. He went to like the actual business and, you know, not where the union workers were doing, you know, their picketing and everything, but he tried to make it seem like he was on the side of the union workers. So it's like it's been that big of a thing, and to have her staunchly against that and against what some of those, you know, poor white people that would traditionally vote for Trump would like look at that and not be cool with that, because like, hey, I'm like my union gives me this, and this. I don't care if they, you know, are endorsing Biden. I'm voting for Trump or whatever because I got some other messed up reasons that go against my self-interest. Like she didn't really have anything to offer different. Like, two, there's way too much misogyny in the Republican Party, I think, for anybody to actually vote her in as president. Vice president, yeah, probably number one in the number one position to be vice president, sure. Like as like the next in line to be president, we can slip her in and she'll do whatever. I think there's way too much misogyny for people to vote for her and accept her as president of the Republican Party. Like it's great that they had a candidate that could get as far as she could. Like they've come like that far in history, but like, nah, it's not gonna happen.
When the cards are on the table, are they really going to vote for a woman to be their president?
Yeah, exactly. I saw a video the other day, like some dude that like said it on camera with his whole chest. He was like, "I think women should be in the kitchen, pregnant and cooking and all this." And I'm like, "Yep."
That wasn't some dude, EK. Wasn't that like one of the fucking candidates that like just, I forget. I saw one of the Republican candidates that just it was like a real dude. Like it was like a real politician. It wasn't just some guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that one. I just saw some dude. There was like, it was an NBC interview, and the guy said that he asked, "Are you going to vote for Nikki Haley?" And he said, "Well, you know, you don't want to hear my answer." He's like, "No, let's hear it." He says, "Well, his quote was, he said, I don't think a woman can be because, you know, she's got no balls to scratch. She'd be scratching her head." That's what he said. And he said, "I think women should be in the kitchen and all that." And after I saw that, I saw a Fox News interview. And they were announcing at this diner. They love going to diners during these primaries and saying that Nikki Haley had dropped out. And Ainsley Earhart asked the guy to talk to a woman. And he talked to this woman sitting down at the diner and says, "Oh, no. But Michelle Obama said she wasn't going to run." And then he asked her what she thought about that. She said, "I think it's great. And by the way, I don't think a woman should be in office. Like Nikki Haley, I'm not voting for her. She's probably menopausal. We can't trust her." And so, yeah, it's like it runs pretty deep. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the clip you're talking about, John, I think is like the guy running for like some state legislator or something like that. But like the guy that was like, we need to go back to like
Mark Robinson.
Go back to when women couldn't vote, or like
yeah. And it was at a women's event. Like it was like by the women of Pitt. So the Republican women of Pitt was at the event he was speaking at.
Yeah, he was the lieutenant governor of, I think, South Carolina again. We keep coming back. Although, EK, I like that you mentioned, like, what's your West Virginia and South Carolina? I don't know, all those fucking backwoods states are the same to me. I don't know. So, everyone living in bumfuck deep South. I don't give a shit. But Mark Robinson, he was the lieutenant governor of South Carolina. I believe it was South Carolina. Am I right?
Yeah, it was North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Nikki Haley's South Carolina.
Oh, yeah, North Carolina. And so, he is running for governor. And I did look up that clip. I looked up the entire clip. It's actually weird because I do a lot of talking about how Republicans love saying that women shouldn't vote or shouldn't run for office. The full quote isn't much better. He says that he does want, people say, do I want to go back to a time before women can vote? I do. I want to go back to the time before women can vote because we had people back then that were fighting for the rights of women to vote, and those people were called Republicans. Still a weird fucking statement to say you wanted to, but I don't want to defend Mark Robinson, or I think it's in Mark Robinson, but that is the full quote. It's a shitty quote either way, but it's not quite as bad as when it cuts off. And trust me, I hate giving, because it doesn't even make sense. It's like, I want to go back to women couldn't vote so we can fight to give the right to vote. I don't know. It's like,
yeah. They might be called Republicans, but ideologically they were progressive.
They wouldn't be, exactly. Yeah. It's bullshit. Yeah, but for someone comments, oh, that's not the actual quote. Okay, yeah, there you go. Congratulations.
It was like, you want to go back to like before the Civil Rights Movement? Like you want to go back to before the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act of like 1965, when people could like legally discriminate against you voting, against you, black man voting.
Yeah.
Like, people had like the grandfather test and the literacy test and the IQ test and all that shit. Like you want to go back to back then? Like, nah, bro. Like just education system is
right. It's disgraceful.
It would be like the Indianapolis Colts celebrating a championship won by the Baltimore Colts in the fucking 60s. I don't know if they ever won one, but like that's what it would be like. It just makes no sense why you would ever do that. But no, this is condemnation of Nikki Haley, by the way, because we're not talking about her. We're talking about fucking random guy Mark Robinson, and that probably says all you need to know about Nikki Haley's case. Like, it was never going anywhere. She got more out of it than she could have bargained for. But I will say, I just want to say, I called Nikki Haley being number 2 months ago. On this show, I was like, I think Nikki Haley has the second best shot at winning the nomination. Like, obviously it's Trump, but if it isn't Trump, it's Nikki Haley. And I think I feel very validated on that take, because I do think that if Trump suddenly died, Nikki's Haley campaign would ramp right back up and she would take this nomination in a heartbeat.
That would be the only way.
And she'd take the presidency. She'd take the whole damn presidency. In fact, if I'm Nikki Haley, I'm poisoning Trump's McDonald's. Like like you win the presidency. It's right there for the taking, Nikki. You just have to murder one
unsuspend her campaign like Marianne Williamson. I mean, she would have the most delegates.
I want to bring up
legal disclaimer: nobody should assassinate anyone.
Yes, it is very important.
That's I'm not even winking. Don't assassinate anyone.
We in no way endorse or condone any harm towards any political figure, especially a former president of the United States. Like, we ought to make that very clear. EK, I want to bring up something because you were talking about how, like, what the differences were between Trump and Nikki Haley when it came down to actual policy. And it's funny because the first thing I thought of was abortion, but really there's not much, because Haley would always try to soft sell abortion, because like she would always talk about how we need to make sure that we aren't punishing these young women. We need to make sure that we are showing them love and everything. It was a lot less fire and brimstone, but Trump's pretty much the same way. Trump doesn't really go out of his way to shit talk abortion. Like, he brags about the judges for Roe v. Wade and everything. So there's not much daylight there. I did think of one though, and it's Social Security. Like, Nikki Haley is actually a lot worse on Social Security than Donald Trump is. Donald Trump does talk about all the time how we need to protect, or whether he actually believes it or not, but at least rhetorically, Nikki Haley comes right out and said many times that the retirement age is too low. We need to raise the retirement age to 70. That's the only one I could think of. And another thing you mentioned is how Nikki Haley has no charisma. I must respectfully disagree, good sir. I think Nikki Haley has average charisma. I think it's just, I know, really. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Yeah, it's what I would expect from just an average person who, with, not bad levels of riz, but nothing, because there are people with no charisma. Mike Pence has no charisma. Like, Doug Burgum has no charisma. Tim Scott has no charisma. So Nikki Haley, I mean, it's like she looks like Bill Clinton compared to those guys. I mean, she doesn't have much, but it's more than a lot of other people. So yeah, that was a good point, pointing out like what the actual difference was, because I think I've said it 5 times this show, is that people don't really vote on policy, much to our chagrin. They vote on how much they like you. We joke that elections are popularity contests. They 100% are, or at least 90% are. That if you can, like, we talked about splitting the country into like a full-on leftist and full-on, fascist. it would really come down to who they liked more, like who presented themselves better, who could put on the best show. And it's sad that human beings work that way. But if they didn't, we couldn't do what we do. So, it kind of works out well for us. But it's sad when you see it in politics.
Yeah, like Nikki Haley needed to embrace the chaos. That was the only way that she was gonna just say some weird shit, do some weird shit. Don't get caught saying that slavery didn't happen or that America's not racist.
Very, very low bar.
It's some
Very
other
low bar.
wall shit, man. Take a page from Vivek Ramaswamy and just be just
wait,
go.
okay, no, she went up in the polls when she did that.
Yeah.
The Republicans are like, oh shit, we like this girl.
Yeah. Well, and John brought it out too, is that I think John's correct that Nikki Haley was playing the long game, because she knew she wasn't going to win. No one was going to beat Trump unless he dies or something bad happens to him with with legally or whatever. But I like John's theory that she's holding on for the Republican Party 8 years from now or something, or for afterward, when they've been forced to abandon Trump, which they inevitably will, one way or the other. And she wants to be, look, I was the one telling you that we should have been sane this whole time. And I do like his theory on that.
Yeah, the one thing that at least the one shining silver cloud of this whole election thing is that after it's over, no matter how it turns out, nobody will ever try to force me to vote for Joe Biden again.
Perfect.
That was an excellent ending, EK. That was great. That was
perfect.
fantastic.
I was hoping you'd bring it home there, EK. I was like, we got to end this. We got to wrap this. And I hopefully he says something that doesn't open up another can of worms. But no, that was
EK has never let us down. He's never let us down.
They're gonna clone Joe Biden and run him. And
that would be.
And we have to vote for him again.
I will leave this country.
This whole time, Dark Brandon is real. He's been a clone of Joe Biden, a red-eyed clone walking around the White House, and he's like, you think you got rid of me, Jack? You're gonna have 100 years of Joe Biden. Yeah, that is pretty funny. I love this. I love this idea. So we've had consistently 3 or 4 viewers this entire episode. We thank you guys for watching. I don't know if you're the same 4 the entire time, but I appreciate you guys, and it's been pretty good. What do you guys think? How'd the show go for you guys? We'll do a little wrap up here.
Thought it was a solid show. Thought I love EK's rant was the highlight.
Incredible.
We need to clip that and send it to you, EK, so you can just post it on your channels, because that was well done.
I had the smoke, but when I saw that topic, I was like, "Oh, thank good for this! I got something to say for this."
Yeah,
that's because honestly, I had the least to say. That was the topic where I had the least to say on, but I thought it might be of some interest, and I'm glad you came with the smoke.
Yeah. So to the 5 viewers watching right now, if you guys missed EK's rant, you'll see it next week. We'll post it during our Centrist episode. But I don't know. We may close the show down now. It's not going to get better than this. We're not going to top. We are not going to top what EK just did. It was 6 minutes. I mean, the guy was just and didn't miss a beat. He was just on a roll. It's like fuck Joe Manchin, fuck Kirsten Sinema, fuck Mitch McConnell. Fuck Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Fuck Mitt Romney. I mean, you had it ready, and I didn't even see
Ruth Bader Ginsburg just took a ricochet shot. We weren't even talking about her. She took a ricochet shot from the grave.
I have been holding a grudge for a long time.
EK's just sitting in hell where is Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
I was just waiting to see who he'd go after next. He's like, fuck William Jennings Bryan, fuck Henry Clay, fuck Harry S. Truman. I mean, he was just gonna get on a roll.
Fuck John Henry Adams.
It was fantastic. I wasn't kidding. That belongs in a museum somewhere. We need to call up the Library of Congress and see if we can get EK's rant in there. It was fantastic.
I'm sure they'll admit that.
Yeah. I love it. That's
the Library of Congress, by the way, low key, one of the coolest things America does. The fact that thing is still running, it's really cool, and I'm glad we have it.
It is actually kind of amazing when you think about the people we have in politics now who think art is gay or whatever. It's I can't believe we're doing this. Why are we spending money on this? It's good that we have that there. The one thing I will say, I'm gonna take the opportunity to shit on the Library of Congress right now. But it's
Library of Congress. Fuck you.
Fuck you. You're next. But it's not shitting on that. It's George Lucas, because Star Wars was put into the Library of Congress, decades ago. and he took it out because it was the master or whatever. And when he did the what is it called? The special edition show. So like the actual Library of Congress edition of Star Wars is the special, like his special edition one that he updated, not the original, because he edited the master. I know, right? I know. And it's like, because there was a big argument. I remember when it happened. It's like, okay, at what point does the art no longer belong to you and it belongs to like society as a whole? Because I feel like, you know, it's been 30 years since Star Wars came out. I think it kind of belongs. Everybody, nope, it's legally mine. So I'm gonna desecrate this masterpiece.
I didn't know the owner of the work had like a say in that. Like I thought it was just like, yeah, we're just putting it in the library. Fuck you. We're
right. It's just like. You can't find like the original Star Wars anywhere, like not on like Blu-ray or whatever. You have to find like a 1985 VHS tape. Like you can't find it like a high quality. I don't know. This is like not what the show's about. I don't want going on this shit. But anyway,
I have a very small vendetta. If I'm president, day one, we're getting the original cut of Star Wars in the library.
We're doing it.
Number one campaign promise.
At least one electoral vote with that. Guarantee you'll get at least one. Like somebody is going to go for it. But hey, we thank you guys for joining the show. We appreciate it. You know, like, comment, subscribe, the whole deal. And we appreciate all your patronage and all your help. So love, peace, chicken grease.
Thanks, everybody.
That was good.